Hi Founder fans, Jason here, and today's founder is Ann Fisher Miller, a woman who played host to several generals during the American Revolutionary War. Now, the Miller family lived in Westchester, New York, just a little bit north of New York City, and when the war broke out, both Ann's husband and two sons went to join the Continental Army. Unfortunately, not long after the Declaration of Independence was signed in late August 1776, Ann gets some bad news. Turns out her husband, Elijah, had been killed during the war. Now, this definitely made her sad, but she still had sons out there. And time went on. Just about 2 months later, October 23rd, 1776, as the story goes, there was a knock on the door, and when Anne went to answer it, who was there but General George Washington, and he was requesting to use her house as headquarters for the Continental Army. The thing is, this story is probably a little overblown because he was there with an army behind him, and when an army approaches your house in the woods, you usually hear them coming before they knock on the door. But either way, she does play host to the Continental Army for about 2 weeks, during which the Battle of White Plains takes place. Now, while the Americans were able to inflict heavy casualties on the British, it was one of a series of losses that had driven the Continental Army from New York City out through upstate New York, down into New Jersey, and would eventually make it to Pennsylvania, after which the battles of Princeton and Trenton famously take place. Now, this is not the end of Miller's story. First of all, 2 months after Washington leaves, she gets another letter. Unfortunately, her two sons had fallen ill with the Continental Army and both passed away, and she had now lost 3 members of her family to the fight for independence. She was still a patriot, though, and George Washington actually returns to her house 2 more times throughout the war to again essentially hijack it as his headquarters. But in addition to that, Charles Lee, Horatio Gates, and Alexander McDougall, all major generals in the Continental Army, would throughout the war take Ann Fisher Miller's house as their headquarters. And by all accounts, she was a very gracious host and obviously a patriot, having lost so much of her family to the cause. She seems to have been happy to help. Now, while this is essentially where her story concludes, she does continue living on her farm and working her farm for the rest of her life, and she lives for several more decades. And when she passes away at the age of 84, it's during the presidency of James Monroe. Although her husband and sons were unable to see America turn into an independent nation, Ann Fisher Miller did, and she got to see them live through the War of 1812 and the nation find the era of good feelings. So that's the story of Ann Fisher Miller, a founding mother, an American patriot. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit like so more people can find out about the American Revolution with us. And if you're new here, subscribe. I put out videos about the American Revolution 7 days a week. I'll be back with another founder for you tomorrow.